Good morning. Welcome on into Let's Bet at Lauren Jabbar here with Mark Zinno. It is Monday. It is New Year's Day, second day of
Plus
the
one.
year because it is January 2nd. I'm like, wait a second. It is not New Year's Day. It's New Year's Day day.
Great.
How
That's
are we,
outstanding.
Zinno?
Good job. Way to kick things off in the new year. Doing really well.
Thank you. Thank you. How are you doing? How was your New Year's?
I'm good. I'm good. New Year's was good. Obviously, again, I spent it at the Georgia-Ohio State game, which was literally one of the best football games in general that I've ever been to. Certainly one of
Could
the
only
best that I've ever
imagine.
watched. I mean, it was an amazing environment. Now, you won't feel sad about this, but a good buddy of mine who came in town for the game is an Ohio State season ticket holder, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just when they lost, when that thing shanked, and of course, that's what happens when you trust a kicker. But I just remember looking over, watching his head hang down, and he was just so melancholy. It took us like 90 minutes to get home from the stadium because obviously Atlanta's a mess at that point in time. But
Mm-hmm.
just the entire environment was unreal. It was an incredible game to watch. I mean, it's why college football is so much of a popular sport, and it was great football all around. Although, can I say this? And I hope
I,
nobody here is listening. I
yeah,
kind of have a little bit of Georgia fatigue at this point in time. I'm kind of secretly
you
pulling for
do.
TCU right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind
I
of have a
mean,
little.
at this point, I am too because they beat my Michigan Wolverines, and I want to say
Well,
that at
that was
least
your own fault.
yeah, they shot themselves in the foot. I mean, two pick sixes, basically stuffed at the half-yard line twice by running two cute plays, trying to, I don't even know, but it's okay. Figure it out
Don't relive
eventually.
it. It's
But
only painful. Don't relive it. Just walk past the pain.
to be honest, I can't. It was a tough New Year's Eve, to be honest with you, but it's okay because then after that, went over to my friends, watched the Georgia game. They were all happy. I was at least happy that they were happy. But for a majority of that game, no one was breathing in the house because everyone was really stressed out the whole time, which is how I felt the
Yeah.
entire Michigan game. So crazy stuff. Also crazy stuff yesterday, week 17 in the NFL. Some teams clinched a playoff berth. Other teams are mathematically eliminated. Other teams are mathematically eliminated, and their coach doesn't necessarily know that they're mathematically eliminated. And we're going to get into all of that today on Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Let's start it out with some winners and losers from week 17. Who is your biggest winner? I feel like we're on the same page, kind of, with all of our winners, losers, and overreactions from this week. Your biggest winner, Zinno, is, drum roll.
I mean, the Green Bay Packers. I mean, look, when
Mm-hmm.
you, especially given the way that they played this year and how much they've struggled at times. And this was a team I
Yeah.
think that was 3 or 4 below 500 at one point. They started in 3-6. To be in a position to control your own destiny, to be able to win and get in the final game of the regular season at home against a division opponent. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all you can really ask for sometimes. Not everybody's going to be 12-3 or 13-3 like the Buffalo Bills. Not everybody's going to have that good of a team. So when you're not one of the best 2 or 3 teams in the league, the best you can hope for is to give yourself a shot to get to the playoffs, and the Green Bay Packers have done that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. And also, my biggest winners are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers because I
Yeah.
know both still are having technically down years, but right now, both are playing the best football of the season, right? The Bucks secured an NFC South title and a home game in the playoffs with a win over the Panthers. They looked like the dynamic passing team that they were back in the Super Bowl, 2 years ago, which is crazy. The Packers also played their best game of the year. They dominated the Vikings. Offensively, they played really well. Aaron Rodgers was killing it. I also look at defensively, too. They had 3 picks off of Kirk Cousins. Now they're at 500. All they have to do this week is win against the Lions, which I'm hoping doesn't happen. I hope the Lions win and the Seahawks lose, which would guarantee a Lions berth into the playoffs. But again, that's neither here nor there, which also brings me to I have a lot of winners this week, special shout out winners in the Lions and Kenny Pickett. The Lions, for me, their season is still going to be successful even if they don't make it to the playoffs this year. They started the season 1-6, and now they've won 7 of their last 9 games. They need to win. The Seahawks need to lose to the Rams to make it. I know that's probably not going to happen realistically, but at the same time, like, they're fighting for a playoff spot right now. They didn't just like roll over and say, "Hey, the season's done." And I'm loving the pieces that they're building. Like, I know defensively they still need to find a few more pieces to be able to slow other teams down. But offensively, I love the speed. I love the talent. I like what they're building. They're the best team in the league at protecting the ball at this point. They have the fewest turnovers in all of the NFL. I love what I'm seeing from them. And then also, Kenny Pickett is my other shout out for winner of week 17 because the Ravens hadn't allowed a touchdown at home over the last 15 quarters. And I'm not saying like he made wild plays or he played out of his mind. He was solid and he did what he needed to do. 27, 168 yards, one touchdown. But what really impressed me was that game-winning series where he completed 5 of 6 throws for 62 yards. And that kept their playoff hopes, although slim, alive. They now need to win against the Browns and have the Pats and Dolphins lose. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but I like the fight.
I would add, you said he didn't make that many great plays. The play he made to throw the touchdown pass to Najee Harris. If that was made by a number 15 in red with the Kansas City Chiefs logo, we'd be raving about that play like there's nobody's business. Chris Collinsworth said that on the broadcast, and he's 100% right. If that was made by a number 17 in a blue jersey with the Buffalo Bills logo, we'd be raving about how great it was. That was an insanely good play and an incredibly tough throw on the run, right where it needed to be to Najee Harris. I mean, that was as good of a quarterback play as you'll get in this league. So he was fantastic last night, Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, he looked really, really good. And even though his numbers don't look phenomenal, he did what he needed to do. And a couple of those throws, like you said, looked like, MVP caliber throws, what he was doing. So let's get into our biggest loser because we are right here on the same page with this one. I'll let you go first.
Well, it's probably not for the reason that you think. I mean, again, it has nothing to do with Ron Rivera not knowing the situation that his team is in, whether they could do it or not. It has everything to do with the nonstop waffling back and forth at the quarterback position, the inability to be anything consistent offensively with so many weapons. Look, Washington has as many weapons on the perimeter and in the backfield as any team in football does, and they just can't figure out a way to maximize them on a routine basis. The offense is disjointed. The play calling is poor. I get it. Maybe some of that is centered around the quarterback, but the bottom line here is that Ron Rivera put himself in this situation because he couldn't make a decision on which quarterback he wanted to play. You made the switch. You get one chance to make a switch. You start waffling back and forth. You're sending a bad message to your locker room and to your entire team, to the organization, that we're just flying by the seat of our pants here. And that's just not what teams that are playoff teams do. They don't just sort of get lucky. I mean, every now and then you get a team that gets lucky and sort of backs their way in due to some freak things happening. But for all the talent that Washington has on the offensive side of the ball, we know how good they are defensively. For all the talent they have on the offensive side of the ball, they should have been a lot better than only scoring, what was it, 10, 17 points against the Browns yesterday? I mean, that was pretty pathetic. I had the Browns plus the points yesterday, so I wasn't totally upset.
Well, at least you won a bet on that one, but the Commanders definitely didn't win a bet. So that was another reason why I look at Washington going back to Carson Wentz, a quarterback, after missing more than 2 months with his broken finger. And I know that Taylor Heineke was he has better stats as a quarterback. He has the team support. He has Washington State's or Washington, D.C.'s support, basically. But he was kind of a liability in terms of holding on to the ball. He had 1 interception, 4 fumbles in the last 3 games. So I kind of get, hey, let's go back to Carson Wentz. But, hey, Ron Rivera needs to remember that Carson Wentz, in moments like this, loves to throw those deep ball interceptions. It's like, yay, I get back to what I'm really good at. I mean, he launched a ton of them. He finished with 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Washington's officially eliminated from playoffs after Green Bay beat Minnie. And to top it off, the fact that Ron Rivera didn't know that his team could be mathematically eliminated. You should probably know that with 2 weeks left in the season. Hey, if we don't win and Green Bay wins, we're out. We need to figure it out at this point. Don't you think as a head coach you should know that or not, really? Because I guess your role is to coach the team to a win.
I mean, you could argue, yes, that your coach should know that. You could also argue that coaches sometimes get myopic and they only worry about each game in front of them and they don't look at the big picture. But somebody on the staff should have sat down and told him, hey, coach, when you're making this game plan, by the way, if we lose, we're going home, period. So, that's just something as a coaching staff everybody should be aware of. And look, I think Ron Rivera is a great culture guy. I think he's a good personnel guy. I think he absolutely knows how to build a winner. But maybe he's just not the best guy to be patrolling the sidelines for this Washington team. And maybe he needs to take a look in the mirror and step back and say, let me get somebody else here. I could sit down with a different coach pregame, go over game script, game plan, things that we need to do to help win a game and sort of inject some ideas. But, it just seems at certain times he's overmatched from a coaching standpoint, and he shouldn't be because that is a very talented roster.
It's going to be interesting to see how their season goes next year, what moves they make in the offseason. They only have 1 week left now that they're officially eliminated from the playoffs. Okay, your biggest overreaction from week 17, hit me with it.
I mean, it's the Minnesota Vikings. Like I saw people on Twitter say, "Oh, the Vikings are fraudulent. They stink. They're going to get bounced in the first round of the playoffs." And like, here's the thing: the Vikings may be fraudulent, and they may lose their first playoff game. But there's a difference between that and saying that they're a bad football team. They're not a bad football team. Look,
Mm-hmm.
they've had 3 losses this year. After each loss, they bounce back the next week with a tough win against another team in fairly convincing fashion. So that
Yeah.
speaks to how good that team really is. I mean, you could argue again with all the one-score wins, they sort of lucked their way to the record that they have. I think there's some truth to that. You know, you're probably more of a median one-score team than most. Instead
Mm-hmm.
of being what 10-0 in one-score games, you might be 6-4, and that changes the scope of
They're
your record
11
or where
and
you are.
11 and 0.
11-0, yeah. So I mean, give them 6-5, give them 7-4, whatever it is. That's still a fairly good football team with a lot of talent on
Yeah.
it. Like, let's not assume that a lot of people are going to assume the Vikings are going to lose their first playoff game because they're playing against a good team. Maybe, but is it really going to shock you if they win a field goal game in the first round of the playoffs? No, because they've been doing it all year long. So, the idea that the Vikings are a bad football team, I think, is just silly at this point.
Yeah, and the fact that people are overreacting about the Eagles losing 2 games in a row with no Jalen Hurts under center is my biggest overreaction. I know we thought the Eagles would be fine without Jalen Hurts, but the drop off from MVP to mustache just isn't necessarily as much as, or I guess it's a little bit more than what we first thought. But people were like, oh, they have such great pieces around the quarterback to hold things together. It's going to be fine. And now they lost 2 in a row. They lost to the Cowboys, which, by the way, was a really good loss because they still played phenomenal in that game. They lost by 6 points. Their loss to the Saints, maybe not necessarily as good. They only scored 10 points in the third quarter, 1 touchdown. It wasn't the best game, to be honest with you, from the Philadelphia
No,
Eagles. They're going to be fine. They're still the top team in the NFC
when
standings
they
right
get Jalen
now.
Hurts
And
back,
per
they'll be fine.
sources, yeah, per sources, Jalen Hurts is going to be back in Week 18. Guess what? They're still the top
Yes.
team in the NFC right now.
Well,
They're
because
going to
again,
beat the Giants this week.
they will rush him back to play. I mean, in a real world, if they had won the game yesterday, Jalen Hurts doesn't play in 18, and no Eagles play in 18 because they have
Yeah,
the number 1 seed locked up. They need to win to get the number 1 seed. So I
yeah.
would assume that Jalen Hurts is going to play if the game gets out of hand early, because I think the Giants are going to be resting a whole bunch of their starters in Week 18 because their position is pretty much locked up at this point in time as the 5 seed or the 6 seed, depending on what happens. But regardless, so once the game gets out of hand, I think Jalen Hurts, pulls out in the third quarter at some point in time. But that's the
Hmm.
reason they're bringing him back at this point in time, just to make sure they lock up the number 1 seed, get an extra bye week, get
Hmm.
everybody rested and healthy. Because what you don't want to have to
Hmm.
do is go out and play in the first round as the 2 seed, especially after the sizable lead you've had in the standings.
Totally. And that's my biggest overreaction just because, at this point of the season, you're taking out an MVP caliber quarterback and putting on Gardner Minshew, which, no offense to Minshew, but he's not Jalen Hurts. So the fact that
No,
once Jalen Hurts is going to be back in, that team's going to be fine. People need to just
that's
chill
why the
out
Saints were my
because
best pick
two
yesterday.
losses are 2 losses. What do you
The
say?
Saints were my play of the day. Saints were my play of the day yesterday. There's not a world alive where Gardner
Love that.
Minshew should be laying 6.5 points to anybody. Period. Like, that was as
Yeah,
easy as
love
pie.
that.
It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. It's time for some Monday Night Football because we got one more game left in Week 17. It's the one everyone's had circled on their calendars. Let's bring in prop Holiday, Bobby Stanley, to get into this Bills-Bengals game in Cincy. The Bills are laying 1.5. That total set at 49.5. Bobby Stanley, how was your New Year's? How you doing?
New Year's was awesome. It was very
Good.
relaxed. Me and my wife went to a steakhouse early. Grandparents watched the kid, and then we stayed home, had champagne, and that was pretty much it. It was not very eventful, but that's what happens when you have a newborn. So, I
Yeah,
was more
I love
excited
it.
for
Hey,
Sunday. I am a loser now, Mark.
you
I'm a full blown Gary. I'm a dad with the. It's everything I
I'm
hated years ago
kidding.
in my
I'm
20s.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Now it's the truth.
Get it.
Um,
I have kids. I
but
get it. I get it.
Oh
I
my gosh,
figured the
that's
other
so
dad in
funny.
the group would
I mean, listen,
sympathize, but
you have to understand something. Anybody with kids who's up past midnight definitely took a nap during the day. Like, that's a guarantee.
I was asleep by 12:30.
Yeah.
But nah, man, naps are hard to come by. Between this, watching the newborn, doing another job, naps are few and far between. But you can see the bags under the eyes. I think.
Cute. Well, hopefully you get some sleep this week. But we do got one
Not
more
tonight,
game
though.
in week
Not
17.
for this game.
Yeah,
You
not
stay up for
tonight.
this game.
Tonight, this game is going to be the one that everyone had circled on their calendars for a long time. It is a wild way to put a bow on week 17. The Bills have now won 6 straight. They had a blowout win in week 16 over the Bears. The Bengals have won 7 straight games. They've also won 9 of their last 10 games. Some would say they are the hottest team right now in the National Football League. How do you see this one, Bobby Stanley, playing out? Hit me with your first prop.
First prop. Well, really quickly before I go into the prop, I found a little fun fact. We do this when we do our digging. Allen and Burrow combined for 66 passing touchdowns and 78 total touchdowns are the most ever by opposing QBs entering a Monday Night Football game. What does that mean? This is the best Monday Night Football matchup we've ever seen this late in the season. That's kind of how I interpreted that stat. And as
Love
far
that.
as who does this game mean more? I mean, it's tough to say, especially in the AFC. They're jockeying for the top 3 seeds. I'm going to say this game may mean more to Buffalo. Now, Cincinnati got a little bit of breathing room yesterday with the Steelers win. They lock up the AFC North. If I look at the Bills, if they lose this game, you lose home field advantage. There's a good chance you get the Chargers in round 1, probably the Bengals in round 2, and then you go into KC. So 2 of the 3 on the road. If you win this game, you pretty much lock up the 1 seed, and then you don't get KC until you're at home at Buffalo. So for on paper, I want to say this game may mean a little bit more to Buffalo. But as far as props, I'm actually going over to Jamar Chase, the Bengals stud wide receiver. I love him over 81.5 receiving yards, and it's really more the line than anything else. The Bills secondary is probably their weakest position group out of the whole team. They don't really disguise coverages from what I've read this week. 26th overall in DVOA against wide receiver ones. 6 wide receiver ones have hit this line all season. Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, you get the idea. Dane Jackson should be who he's lining up against, the cornerback for the Bills. He's 88 out of 121 corners according to PFF. And Chase at home, 107 yards per game for his career. So hitting both home games since returning from his injury. I'm going to go with Chase over 81.5 receiving yards if you can still find it. Maybe 83.5 and above at this point.
All right. Well, to your point, Bobby, here's the interesting thing about this game. Bengals have won 7 straight. They've covered 7 straight. And they've all been against short numbers or as a dog. I think they had one game that was over a touchdown as a favorite, and that was about it. That said, I don't want to step in front of the Cincinnati Bengals. But if you look at the Buffalo Bills and in primetime this year alone, 31-10 win in the opener against the Rams, 41-7 win over the Tennessee Titans. Go to Green Bay Sunday night, 27-17 win. That's 10 points. Over New England, 24-10, a 14-point win. All those in primetime. You get the very best of Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in primetime. Very tough to step in front of the Cincinnati Bengals right now, but Josh Allen in primetime always seems like a successful recipe. I think the under actually comes in this game, but where would you sit on a Josh Allen prop for tonight?
As you pointed out, how he is in primetime, I saw his I saw his stats in primetime this year. They're unbelievable. To the point you said, double-digit victories in primetime seem to be happening with frequency. Sounds like a negative game script. Makes me feel better about my Jamar Chase receiving yards. Allen rushing, it stands out. I think it's at like 42.5, 44.5. It's hard. It's hard to touch a line like that if they can get the ball moving against this Bengals secondary. Their number 1 corner is out. They got a rookie back there. I think his name is Cam Britt-Taylor, and Eli Apple, who is not a good corner. So it may not be a situation where he has to rush the ball much. That would be something I kind of shy away from the Allen props. But over passing touchdowns, if you can get 2.5 with some plus money or a little bit over plus money, sounds like a good play. Don't know if we're going to see much running game tonight. I know that's kind of in the back of our head expectation. We want to see a duel between these two. But the secondaries, I think, are the weakest position groups of the matchup.
Who do you think, with you saying that the Bills on paper need this game just a little bit more, who do you think comes out on top of this one?
I'm going with the Bills. I am taking the Bills because it does matter a little bit more to me because of how they performed in prime time. Bengals have been surging. They're probably one of the hottest teams in the league, but I think this might be a little bit of a reality check, which they could use going into the playoffs. They have it in their mind. They've been very cocky all week. You hear the way they've been talking. The AFC runs through us. We're the defending AFC champions. 100% they are. Be careful who you're talking to across the field with Josh Allen in Buffalo in primetime. So I'm going to go with the Bills on the road, laying the 1.5.
Be careful what you wish for, baby. That's all we got to say about that. This game is going to be such a fun way to cap off week 17. Bobby Stanley, we so appreciate you coming on. Get some sleep this week, okay? But not tonight. Make sure to watch the game tonight. Tomorrow morning, maybe get some sleep.
There's too much NBA to handicap. I got to watch your Hawks this week. But no, I will sleep later in life, not at this point. But no,
Yeah,
good luck,
they
guys.
are on the West Coast. On the West Coast all week. That's a late game to stay up for, my friend.
Yeah, it's tough in Jersey to do the West Coast games, but they're usually the better matchups. Now, best of luck tonight. This is the Monday Night Football game to watch. Prime time, we've been snubbed all year. This is the early playoff surprise for us. So, best of luck, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. That is Bobby Stanley, Prop Holiday, giving us his best props for Week 17, Bo, Monday Night Football. All right, before we get into some of the bowl games today, because there are 4 of them, 4 big ones, I have 5 burning NFL questions for you, Zeno. Are the Buccaneers a threat to win round 1 playoff game?
I mean, I don't really like the phrasing of that question because the answer simply is yes. I mean, are you asking if Tom Brady's a threat to win a playoff game? Yeah. Tom Brady is always a threat to win a playoff game. Like that's
Of
not,
course he is.
it's not a very difficult question to ask. If you have Tom Brady, you're always a threat to win anything because you have Tom Brady. So the short answer, yes.
Okay, I like it. Are the Jaguars the hottest team right now in the league? 6-2 in the last 8 games.
No, I'd still put the Bengals as the hottest team in the league right now. They've played against much better competition across the board, tougher road games easily. I mean, I'm still not 100% sold on the Jaguars. That's just me. They're going to play this Saturday night game for the division against Tennessee. And again, I still think they're laying way too big of a number in this game. But you look at the way that they have won a couple of games. I mean, again, they beat up on a decimated Titans team on the road. I was kind of surprised at that. They probably shouldn't have beat the Cowboys. You can make an argument that they deserved it, but they didn't. The Jets' offense was inept with Mike White or Zach Wilson, rather, in that game. And then, of course, they beat up on the Texans. A lot of people thought the Texans would keep it close yesterday. I did too, but they're not exactly playing the cream of the crop here. When you look at them against some of the better teams in the league, obviously they get beat by the Chiefs. They probably shouldn't have beat the Ravens again. They got lucky in that win. They lose to the Lions. I mean, they'll beat the Titans because the Titans are so banged up and they have no offense. But I don't think that they are a team that can win a playoff game at this point.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the Jags going forward. I do love the progression that we've seen of Trevor Lawrence this season, though. It feels like this is like his season where he is really maturing, and I feel like in seasons to come, we're going to see some special stuff from him. Okay, AFC picture. Chiefs, Bills, Bengals right now, the top 3 teams in the AFC. I don't necessarily love how this question is worded. It says, are the Chiefs the 3rd best team in the AFC? Who do you think is actually the best team in the AFC? Do the Chiefs deserve to be at the top at 13-3, or do you think it's more the Bills or the Bengals?
Well, I've said all year long the Bills are the best team in the league, and I'll stick with that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go off that. That said, I mean, there are 3 places that bookmakers and odds makers have made a ton of money this year off of the public. One is laying points with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 2, laying points with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, right? Because they've been terrible all year long offensively. And 3 is laying more than a touchdown with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have 2 wins this year by more than 11 points. That's it. We're into this notion that Kansas City blows everybody out and they win games handily. I'm sorry, they now have 3 after beating the Seahawks 24-10. I apologize. But again, they're stuck in another game with the Broncos that probably they should have easily won when they were 13.5-point favorites. I mean, Chiefs are a lot closer to the rest of the NFL than people think. Now, them being the 3rd best team in the AFC, there's a pretty big gap between them and the 4th team in the AFC, whoever you may think that may be. But still, I would probably keep them a notch below the Bengals at this point in time. We'll see. I mean, look, you're never going to count out the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. They're just too talented, and they're too good, and they're too well coached. But when you're saying that they're the 3rd best team in the AFC right now, it's a very small gap between them and the Bengals, and then the Bengals and the Bills.
Speaking of too well coached, let's take it to the New York Giants. Would you consider Brian Daboll the coach of the year in the NFL this season?
I'll rephrase the question. If Brian Daboll isn't the coach of the year, who is? I mean, think of it that way, right? I mean, like, in general, that is a roster that was completely devoid of any real talent, save 2 or 3 players. I mean, you can even look here in Atlanta where I am with Arthur Smith, right? Arthur Smith equally had one of the worst rosters league. The difference is that he's only won 6 games on the year, and the Giants are about to win 10 and go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think you have to look at it from that standpoint. I mean, sure, you could look at some other coaching jobs around the league. Obviously, Sean McDermott in Buffalo is always going to get a look. You could even look at Doug Peterson in Jacksonville if you really wanted to go down that road. Steve Wilkes might even get some nods for the way he had Carolina playing over the last couple of weeks, but it's got to be Brian Daboll. I don't know if there's anybody else really that even deserves a look after him. All the other guys who deserve a look are teams with winning records and a ton of talent. That's just not what Brian Daboll has in New York.
Yeah, he doesn't have very many pieces, and he's made it work. Bonus question on that. What do you think the Giants should do with Daniel Jones in the offseason?
I mean, listen, I would characterize myself as a Daniel Jones skeptic. I'm not a Daniel Jones hater. I'm a Daniel Jones skeptic. I think that I'd love to see him with actual weapons in the passing game to find out what he really is. Clearly, he's one of these quarterbacks that's undervalued because of how good he is with the football when he runs with it. I mean, I think he's every bit as good as Josh Allen when it comes to running the football. He's certainly not good at passer as Josh Allen. If I'm the Giants, I think the smart way to go about doing this is you offer him a contract that was similar to what the 49ers offered Jimmy Garoppolo a couple of years. It's a 6-year deal, but really it's a 3-year deal that you can get out from under fairly quickly if it goes belly up. And again, he's, 25, 30 million average annual value is probably below market right now for quarterbacks. But, I would make him an offer and say, go see if you can beat it on the open market and then come back to us. We'll see if we'll match it. But what you don't do is franchise Daniel Jones. You want to know why you don't franchise Daniel Jones?
Yeah.
Because the guy you're supposed to franchise is Saquon Barkley. That's the guy you franchise and make him play under a tag for another year because he's more likely to break down than Daniel Jones is. So I would rather them give Daniel Jones a long-term contract that they can get out from under than give the running back the long-term contract because in reality, those ones are the ones that end up being bad deals. So I think that's kind of the way you handle it if you're the Giants.
And last but not least, I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but should we, it's early here on the West Coast. I don't know how Jared does this all the time, by the way. It's like 7:30. I was up at like 5:30 getting it ready. Should we be worried about the Eagles or no, since Jalen Hurts is coming back in week 18?
No, there's nothing. The only worry you have about the Eagles is who your next matchup is in the postseason. This is not going to all of a sudden be a bad football team. And oh, by the way, yesterday, it's like, what they only gave up 20 points. And one of those was sort of like a garbage touchdown at the end of the game where it was already a 10-point game out of hand. So, I mean, that's still a really good defense. They still run the ball really, really well. And I don't think there's any concerns about the Eagles being the prohibitive favorite to win the NFC.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Okay, we're taking it from men to boys because we got 4 bowl games going on today. First and foremost, Mississippi State taking on Illinois right now. Mississippi laying 3, I think. Still they're laying 3. And that total is set at 46 at this point. I know that, Mississippi State's coming into this game in the wake of tragedy, the sudden death of their former head coach, Mike Leach. So sad. The school decided to play the game to honor him because that's what he would want. Do you see this being a motivation factor, obviously, for Mississippi State? And because of that, do you choose them, or is there reasons like Illinois' defense being one of the best in the college football game? Do you lean towards Illinois?
No, I mean, we talk about motivation in bowl games all the time. It's a different level of motivation. It's a different type of motivation. So, yes. And if you see the helmets that Mississippi State is wearing with the pirate flag in honor of Mike Leach, which is sweet. It almost looks like a Buccaneers logo, but nonetheless. So they're absolutely going to be very, very, primed for this game. The question is how much can Will Rogers have success against a very, very stout Illinois defense? That's really what this boils down to. I think Mississippi State needs to score early. Because if you can get a lead on Illinois, they're not good from playing from behind. They're not built to play from behind. So it really boils down to, I mean, the way you can play this sort of game, you can do one of two things. You can live bet it and see what happens if Mississippi State gets down early in thinking that they might be able to get back in it because they have a high-powered offense, one that can throw the ball all over the place, or just take Mississippi State in the first quarter. And if they have a lead, guess what? They're going to have that lead for the entire game. I shouldn't say that. They're likely to stay with the lead, depending on how big it is, if they can, get out early. I just think that's really the key to this game for Mississippi State to score early. If they don't, Illinois' defense may be able to shut them down for 4 quarters.
Yeah, this is Illinois' first bowl game since 2019, but they do have the number one defense and defensive pass efficiency. They also have the number one scoring defense, allowing only 12.3 points per game. This is definitely going to be Mississippi State, their offense, the motivation factor behind it against Illinois' defense. Chase Brown has opted out of this game to prepare for the NFL draft, so that's a big loss for Illinois at that point. I just feel like this is such a motivation game for Mississippi State. 3 points. The line a little bit earlier yesterday was like at 1.5, and now it's moved to 3. A lot of money's coming in on Mississippi State at this point, so we'll see what happens in this one, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. And they're playing in a stadium, Zeno, with a pirate ship there too. So lots of pirates there for Mike Leach. Rest in peace. That's such a sad, sad story. I'm rooting for Mississippi State today to honor Mike Leach's legacy. Tulane taking on USC. USC is laying 2.5 points here. That total set at 66.5. It's been ticking up over the last day or two. The Cotton Bowl in Arlington for USC. Jordan Addison opted out. O-lineman Drew Voorhees opted out. USC is still one of the best offensive teams in the country, though. They average 41.4 points per game. They rank top 5 nationally in total yards and passing yards. They also have the fewest turnovers of any FBS team. And Caleb Williams, I think right now he's listed as probable, but he plans to play through his hamstring injury. He obviously won the Heisman Trophy this year. Austin Jones will be big for USC in wearing down Tulane with the run game. For Tulane, they have a great defense. They're only allowing 20.5 points per game on the season. They're also only allowing 188.5 passing yards per game. This is Caleb Williams again versus Tulane's defense. Who do you think comes out on top?
Well, the total in this game is my play of the day, so I'll get a little bit deeper to it I'll get a little bit deeper into it in a moment. That said, it's interesting to see that this number opened up around USC -2, 2.5, and it seemed very short initially. But it tells you how much respect odds makers are giving to Tulane, as much as this is a team that really, with a great ground game that averages nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. You look at what USC's defense is. Which hasn't been spectacular down the stretch. I think Tulane has a very good shot to stay in this game, maybe even win it outright. We talk a little bit about motivation. Anytime you get a group of 5 team playing a Power 5 team, the motivation factor always edges to the group of 5 team because they want to beat one of the big boys. So it's going to be very, very much a question here of how much can USC's defense slow down the Green Wave offense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And motivation factor for this one, I feel like USC doesn't want to be here. This could be a letdown spot for them. All they had to do was win a game to get into the college football playoff. Now they're playing in the Cotton Bowl instead because they got crushed. So this might be a good motivation factor too for Tulane. They want to beat the big boy, and USC doesn't want to be there. They might not 100% be up for this game, and with the opt-outs that they have, you never know what happens in a game like this. Okay, let's look at LSU, who right now is taking on Purdue. Right now, LSU laying 15 points in this game, which is crazy. That total set at 56. 2 teams that are licking their wounds after getting destroyed in their conference championship games. Both teams have a ton of opt-outs at this point. LSU receiver Keyshawn Bout, their DN BJ Ojulari. Purdue, their quarterback Aiden O'Connell isn't playing. LSU's quarterback Jaden Daniels was the reason that their offense was so high-powered this season. He completed just under 70% of his passes, 16 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. He had a really, really good year. And he's probably going to be able to use Malik Neighbors, take advantage of Purdue's defense. For Purdue, though, they had the best passing offense in the Big Ten. But guess what? Their quarterback isn't playing in a game like this. Instead, we get 6th-year quarterback Austin Burton under center, 3 years at UCLA, and this is his 3rd year at Purdue. 6 years in college football. And this is only his 3rd career start. We don't necessarily know what to expect from him, but LSU's laying 2 scores. Like, do you maybe get a backdoor cover taking the points with Purdue?
That's the way I would lean. It's just too many points for me to lay with LSU at this point in time. I know Brian Kelly wants to win a bowl game, right? He wants to punctuate his season for Purdue, for LSU rather, with a win over Purdue. And I think that's a big part of it. But Purdue losing Jeff Brom, who's now the head coach at Louisville, is probably the bigger issue for me. Look, if Jeff Brom was coaching this game, I would love to jump all over Purdue, getting double-digit points. Heck, I might even take him on the money line because Jeff Brom in his career has been an amazing coach in these spots. He just has been. It's just He's always been very good. LSU needs one more win to get a 10-win season in Brian Kelly's first year. So I think all that stuff matters to them. But I just don't trust this team right now. I go back to, and again, not that Purdue is at the level of an Arkansas team in the SEC, but remember, LSU struggled in that game against Arkansas, almost lost the thing on the road. You get a neutral site game. There's just a lot of weird factors in this game. I'll probably stay off it across the board. You put a gun in my head, I'll take the points with Purdue and hope that they can get lucky, with the backdoor cover, like you said. You could see a situation here where LSU gets out early and then is able to play comfortably for a better part of this game. But, you get an early lead by Purdue, you're sitting pretty for the better part of the next 2+ quarters.
Last but not least, we have Penn State taking on Utah right now. Utah's laying 1.5. That total is set at 53.5. Penn State got to 10 wins this year for the first time since 2019. Good for them. Utah played in the Rose Bowl last year. They lost in a shootout to Ohio State. This is the Sean Clifford versus Cam Rising shootout game. We are going to get some high-level quarterback play, and I am so excited for this one. For Penn State, I feel like their run game will make a little bit of a difference, too, with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Their O-line's still been a little inconsistent, but I still feel like their run game can take advantage. For Utah, it's really big that Dalton Kincaid, one of the best tight ends in the Pac-12 and in college football, opted out after dealing with a lot of injuries the second half of the season. But also something interesting, both teams play really great third down defense. Utah's only allowing teams to convert less than 30% of the time. Penn State about 30.6% of the time. This comes down to which quarterback plays more solid, because both of the quarterbacks are converting on like 65% of third down opportunities. So it's which defense can stand stronger against some solid quarterback play. Who do you think comes out on top of this one?
You get a really physical matchup between these two teams. I mean, Utah prides themselves, Kyle Whittingham prides himself on being a very physical team and a ground and pound kind of team. And certainly Penn State has developed into one of those in the Big Ten. You talk about Nicholas Singleton in the year that he's had. I expect him to be run a lot. Now, this is not the same Utah defense that we're used to seeing. We talked about that a lot this year in the Pac-12. The teams will be able to move on them and move the ball on them. So I think that that's still a viable option here. My heart will be with Penn State. I'd love to see them win this thing. I mean, look, this is the second to last ever iteration of the Rose Bowl where we see Pac-12 versus Big Ten, right? Like there's only one more of these things. The Rose Bowl will still be around, but once you get the college football playoff expansion, you're not getting the traditional Pac-12 Big Ten matchup that we always love to see. So I would love to see Penn State win this thing, but I mean, James Franklin in these big time games always seems to give a little bit of a
chokehold.
And with it being such a short number here, and again, it's almost surprising to see Utah lay the points, but under a field goal, my heart will be with Penn State. My money will be with Utah.
I like it. I really like it. All right, before we get into our best bets of the day, Let's Bet It is presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Make sure to go to superbook.com or download the app today. In this season, we are all rooting for safeties. That's because Superbook will give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. Just place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or any total, and if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you get a $50 bonus. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. From superbook.com to pickswise.com. Zeno, 3-star plays of the day we got on the site today. New Year's Day.
There is, New Year's Day times 2, squared that is. There is one of them on there for a bowl game today, one that we have already just discussed. So go check out pickswise.com to see what the 3-star play of the day on the website is today.
And your best bet of the day, who you got heading into? There's so much going on. Good bowl games. We got week 17, putting a bow on it. I love it.
Go to Jerry's World and the Cotton Bowl, USC and Tulane. Looking at a number that is gone now. And I will tell you that over the last, 48 hours, starting pretty much on New Year's Eve morning, this total has been steamed up from 62.5, where I posted the play on the website, now to 65.5. So the best of this number may be gone here. But still, USC's gone over in 7 straight games, all but 2 of them surpassing a total of 62. Tulane has gone over in 6 of their last 7, although they've seen much lower totals, probably most of them in the mid-50s. Now, USC's defense has given up 40 points per game over their last 3 games, and the Green Wave running game averages nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. They should have plenty of running room. And the Trojans' pass defense, suspect all year long, giving up over 265 yards through the air. Look, you're still getting Caleb Williams. You're still getting a whole lot of good offensive potency on the USC side of the ball. That matters. USC is going to score, and they are going to score a ton in this game. The USC backups are probably still more athletic than most of the Tulane starters, so I give the edge to USC from a talent standpoint. But go back to what we saw in UCLA Pitt in their bowl game, because UCLA's defense, much like USC's, they're just ripe for the picking. And Pitt is not a great offense, and they were able to score. I think Tulane is a very solid offense. They're going to be able to score. I think both these teams get into the 30s. This number is around 65 right now. I don't hate it at 65. There's just a missed field goal or a touchdown, or somebody settles for a field goal instead of a touchdown. That may be the difference in this game. But I think both of these teams are in the 30s, if not one of them in the 40s. If this game stays under, it's because the Tulane Green Wave have an amazing defensive effort and shut down a USC offense. Or, not that I'm wishing this, Caleb Williams re-aggravates his hamstring injury and doesn't play the rest of the game. I think that's the only way these games stay under. Both these offenses stay healthy for 4 quarters. They're going to go way over this total of 62.5. So try to get the best number you can out there, but I locked it in on the Pickswise.com website when I wrote it up earlier in the week at 62 and at 62.5. So let's go points today in the Cotton Bowl.
Would you like it still? So most books are showing 66.5. Would you still take it at 66.5?
I mean, honestly, no. Not knowing I missed the best of the number, right? I mean, that field goal could be huge. I mean, if it was 62.5 to 63.5, or even just 2 points where a field goal might not change it. I mean, that's kind of, the math you have to do here. Once you get over a field goal, you need another touchdown to sort of get back over. It's tough. Like I said, you missed the best of the number, but I had this in earlier in the week, or even before New Year's. It was way in earlier in the week. Before New Year's, I posted this on the website. So
back in 2022.
Right. The best of the number is gone here, but I might be able to take my little closing line value trophy, and hopefully I'll be waving it by the end of today.
Yeah, absolutely love it. My best bet of the day, I'm taking it back to the NFL. Boys to men, Bengals, Bills, over 49.5. I think this game is going to be an absolute shootout. It's the Monday Night Football game that we're all looking forward to. Bills have won 6 straight games, blowout win week 16 over the Bears. The Bengals have won 7 straight. They've won 9 of their last 10. And we have Josh Allen going up against not your average Joe Burrow. 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. 2 of the NFL's top 6 offenses going head-to-head. They're averaging a combined 56 points per game throughout the entire season. This is a really good spot for Josh Allen and Joe Burrow to outduel each other. Both teams want a really big win with the playoffs right around the corner. Like Bobby Stanley was saying, the Bills on paper need this a little bit more just to guarantee maybe a better matchup in the first couple rounds of the playoffs, et cetera, home field advantage. But Joe Burrow, the O-line, I loved how they've stepped. I feel like they're going to create a lot of time for him to be able to throw the ball. I just see this game being an absolute shootout, a lot of passing attempts from both guys, and I like the over 49.5. A lot of points scored to put a bow on week 17 of the NFL football season. That is it for us today, guys. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. I'm Lauren Jabara. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's get it. Let's bet.